Hi, this is Terry Westbrook. I thought I'd talk a little bit about taxable value of your property and how the taxes for your principal residence or, for that matter of fact, the rental property is established in your city or your township every year. Basically what happens is December 31st of every year, the city or township assessor has to determine the value of your property. The value of your property determines what your taxes are going to be for the year based on the tax rate for your, again, city or township. So with that said, a lot of times when you first purchase your property, that's the best chance for you to establish a fair market value and to get the assessed value correct. Now there's a number of issues that determine what the assessed value should be. A lot of the areas today, the assessed value might be a little bit higher than the fair market value of the property. So we just have to be careful when you first purchase that we get the established correct assessed value and then taxable value so you're not overpaying on your taxes. The two things that you'll look at is first assessed value. Assessed value is 50% of the value of the property. And for your first year after you've just bought, the taxable value will also be 50% of the fair market value of what you paid for it. And then each year, based on Proposal A that was passed in 1994, your tax authority has the right to increase your taxes based on inflation but not to exceed 5%. That hasn't been a problem in the past, but we just have to make sure that each year that we're appropriately taxed. Along with this, if it's your primary residence, we have to make sure that you're receiving the homestead exemption. The homestead exemption will traditionally give you much lower taxes. Based on, again, Proposal A that was passed in 1994, if it's your non-primary residence, there's an additional 18 mills that are established as an additional tax to someone that has a property that's not their primary residence. Let's say that we've just bought a house, or you're trying to make sure that your taxes are appropriate on the property. What's the process that we go through? We want to make sure there aren't any mistakes. They don't show two baths when you have a bath and a half. They don't show that your house has additional square footage or amenities like fireplaces or anything that's an upgrade that potentially the assessor can determine is a taxable event on your property. With that said, review that card. Go over it with the assessor. They'll help you with it. They've probably never been in your property. They've gone by, they've taken photos, but they're using the original building records to determine what was put into the property. And in most cases, as long as you've got your appropriate building permits as they modified the property, it should be up to date. Doesn't mean it always is. Again, they've never been in the property, so let's double check and make sure that's appropriate. Are the percentage good, which means as your property ages, the value of it depreciates if you don't do any work to it. But let's say your house is in good condition. You've got a relatively new roof, a new furnace, you've upgraded the windows, you put a new kitchen in. All of these things have an evaluation determination that will give you value on your taxes. Let's just make sure that's appropriate. You can go over that again with your assessor to hopefully make sure that that's appropriate. Are there other issues with the property? Let's say you had a cracked foundation. That would definitely have a detrimental effect to the value of the property, and the assessor may not know about that. So let's again make sure that they know all the bad things about the property so they can make an appropriate adjustment so you're not overpaying for the property. Another thing that enters into this is the comparable properties that have sold around your house. Every time a property sells, that record goes to the Register of Deeds, and within that Register of Deeds, that gives the assessor the information that they need to determine values of comparable properties. So as you've been in the property for year after year after year, you want to make sure that you're paying a fair amount, and that fair amount is equal to what similar houses like yours have sold for. And that's where I might be able to help, or your realtor, is to get into an evaluation process to determine what has sold in the neighborhood, how comparable they are to yours, and are you paying a fair rate just like everybody else. Now let's say that you've done all this, but you still feel your taxes are too high. How do you correct that if the assessor's not willing to correct it based on your discussions with him? Well, December 31st of every year, they set the assessed value. Sometime the end of February, first part of March, you're going to receive notification in the mail that your taxes are going to be based on this assessed value and this taxable value. If you agree, nothing has to happen. If you don't agree, you have a relatively narrow window that you can then appeal your taxes for the property. And how you do that is you generate a letter that you would submit to the city or township, and it says, based on these sets of information, I believe my taxes are too high. With that, then you'll have to take the documentation that you collect, which is going to be comparable sales, maybe an appraisal, any documentation that you have on deficiencies in the property, you prepare all that, and you take it to the township or city, and you set in front of what they call the Board of Review. The Board of Review are the assessor and members of the public that have been selected that have maybe a little more information on how the assessment process works, and you present your case. I've gone to several of these with my clients, and in most cases, if you present a compelling case, they're just people that live in the township or the city, and they're willing to adjust that based on your information. So we just have to work through that process and make sure the information you provide to them is good information so they can make an intelligent decision. If they don't agree with you, well, there's still another process, but it better be a big deal. It better be a lot of money if you want to go on to the next level, which is appealing to the Michigan Tax Tribunal. But that's basically the process. So if you have any questions about that, give me a call at 616-292-7263 or email me at terry@terrywestbrook.com, and I'll make sure I get you some information that will help you in this process.